This is the screen for AutoCAD 2011, which has changed a little bit from 2010. So we're just going to take a little survey. The background is now dark. It used to be white. You can change that if you'd like. If you want to change it, you would go to the Options command. If you right-click, go down and pick Options. Under Display, Colors, you can go in and you see it's got a color identified, and that color is identified with a mixture of red, blue, and green. But if you'd like, you can go and say, I'd really like to have a white background. Apply, close, now you have a white background. Up to you how you want to do it. I'm going to go with a white background for this video. You also have this grid paper look in the back. If you like that, you can leave it on. If you don't like it, you can go down to the status bar, which is the bar along the bottom. If you go to the third button in where it says Grid Display and select it, it turns it off. This looks a lot more now like AutoCAD 2010 would have looked. It's not quite the same, but it's a little more similar. Now as you start drawing lines, you're going to see black lines on a white background instead of white lines on a dark background. Let's go ahead and erase that. The status bar also has a few other controls that you might be interested in. One of them is the polar tracking control, which should be generally turned on. You can change the angle for polar tracking from what it currently has, which is 45 in this case. That's actually, I changed that. 90 is what it's normally set to, but you can set it to a different incremental angle if you want. 45 isn't a bad one. You can go ahead and do that. You can also set specific angles by right-clicking and going to Settings. And polar tracking is what you get as you're drawing when you approach the angle you selected. So there's a 45-degree angle, there's a 90-degree angle. Hit Escape on that. The other button down here that's significant and that should also normally be turned on is the one next to it called the Object Snap button. I'm going to right-click on that, and it goes and shows you the current settings for object snaps, and these are snaps that are going to automatically show up as you're drawing. You can go into the settings on this one as well, and you can change them here. I would suggest adding midpoint to the ones that are already there. So you have endpoint, midpoint, center, intersection, and extension. Those are the ones that I use almost all the time, at least leave running all the time. So now if you happen to have a circle, and then you need to draw a line, and the line has to go to the center of the circle, you can snap right to the center of the circle. If you want to go with another line to the midpoint of a line, you can grab the midpoint. Just erase those as well. The other button here is the 3D object snap. Unless you're doing a 3D model, you probably want to leave that turned off. It won't make any difference if you're doing two-dimensional work, but it does allow you in 3D modeling to snap to elements on the model itself. For what we're doing in the CAD graphics class, we'll leave it turned off. Beside it, you have the object snap tracking. That should also be turned on most of the time. And the reason you want that turned on is so that if you are drawing, you have something on the screen, and you want to draw something relative to what's on the screen, with object snap tracking on, you can hover over an object snap, move away from it, it'll track along, and then as you start drawing, you'll be drawing in a manner that's lined up with the object snap that you tracked from. Get rid of those things as well. Other than that, you've got dynamic input, which I turned off when I installed the software. If you'd like to try it, you can turn it on. Dynamic input means that you're going to be seeing what you're doing right at the location of the cursor. This location down here, the command line, actually ends up sort of being dragged around with your cursor. Then you have show and hide line type, or line weight, I'm sorry. And that just indicates if you have a layer that has a thick line type, if you want to see that as you're drawing, you can turn it on, or if you don't want to see it, you can turn it off. Beside it, you have show and hide transparency. You probably want to leave that on. That has to do with some of the various features in AutoCAD that allow you to create elements that are semi-transparent and you can see through them. The other two items, quick properties and selection cycling, we'll leave for right now turned off. At the bottom of the screen, what you're looking at is, if I just paused and came back, if this seems like it's discontinuous, that's why. The area down below is called the command line. This is something that is unusual in CAD programs. I like it a great deal, and most people who have been using AutoCAD like it a great deal, because if you're thinking, I'd like to draw a line, what would I do? You can just try like typing the word line, and sure enough, if you press enter and something happens down here, it's a command. You can also say, well, line's a pretty common command. I wonder if there's an alias like just the letter L. Turns out there is. So if you go through here and want to draw a circle, you can type in the word circle, you can type the letter C. You want to draw an arc, you can type the word arc, you can type the letter A. You want to do some text, letter T, the mtext command comes up. Type the word text, you get something a little different. It's a little unusual. Most users of AutoCAD use the command line fairly extensively. It is possible, if you'd like, to turn the command line off. You can go right over that little X right there and just say, see you later. And it comes up and tells you, do you want to close the command line? It says if you want it back again, use Control 9. You can say always close it. If I say yes, I'm stuck here, which means I probably want to turn dynamic input on. So then I have essentially a dynamic command line. That's really up to you. That's an individual user's choice. I don't particularly like it. I like having the command line. However, I also like having the command line at the top of the screen instead of the bottom of the screen. You can do that by dragging it up and then parking it up here, or docking it is what it's actually called. And when you do it, it comes below the pull-down menu. So when I teach, I like it up there because people can see it. Do not leave the command line floating. If the command line is floating, it interferes with a couple of different kinds of commands, so you have to dock it. This isn't a design, by the way, it's a flaw, but you have to dock it. If you don't like the way the print looks, you think it should be a little bit bigger, you can right click and go back to this options command. And again, under display, instead of this time going to colors, we can go to fonts, and you can pick Lucinda Console, number 14. And if you do that, you'll notice that now the words are a little bit bigger and they're a little bit easier to read. Just a few other things about the interface itself. If you continue on the status bar, and you come over here, you'll notice there's a button that says Model. You'll also notice that there are tabs up at the bottom of the actual editing screen, Model, Layout, Layout. If you pick the tabs, you switch to a sheet of paper view. Layout 2 is another sheet of paper 2. M goes back to Model. Model is literally a space where you create your geometry, where you place things full size, actual size, and do your modeling in either 2 dimensions or 3 dimensions. And what we recommend here is that you do most of your work in model space until you get ready to add annotation and create a layout for the purpose of plotting. If you go to that little word here, picking the button over here does something similar. It just switches to the last layout you were in and then goes back and forth from model space to paper space in the layout. So you notice now when I pick that button, it says paper at the moment. I'm in something called paper space. Pick the word paper and it switches to model space, and I get a little window here, and that little window is the same as this but smaller. It's the place where you do your modeling. So either one of those works. I'll recommend that you just leave things the way they are for now. A few other buttons here we won't worry about. The 1-to-1 button and the annotative scale. As you start plotting, you're going to determine a scale to plot many drawings at. If what you're drawing is too big to fit on a sheet of paper actual size, then you would create a scale. 1/4 inch equals a foot for an architectural scale, 1 to 10 maybe for something structural detail, 1 to 2 possibly for a mechanical part. We'll leave that for a later time, and these other buttons we'll leave for a later time as well, except for the workspace switching. Workspaces in AutoCAD are just different interfaces, different appearances of the interface. And if you've been used to using AutoCAD for some time, you may choose to pick AutoCAD Classic. AutoCAD Classic looks like this, and for long-time users of AutoCAD, it's a little more familiar. We'll be using 2D drafting and annotation in the CAD graphics course, so that's where I'm going to leave it for right now. Now, 2011 has a couple of features here that you may not really want turned on, and you'll notice one of them is this navigation bar, which allows you something called the navigation wheel. It's got the pan command in here, zoom extents, there's an orbit, which is a 3D option, object mode, which turns well, actually that's only available to me, not to you, because I actually have a 3D mouse and that's what that controls. And then you have something called the slideshow or show motion. I'm going to turn that off, and I would recommend that you do the same by just doing that. You've also got what's known as the nav cube up here, NAVVQUBE. I don't know why the second V. I'm going to turn that off as well. Cancel. Oh, I'm sorry, that doesn't turn off there. In order to turn it off, you literally have to type NAVVCUBE and then say, let's turn it off. So I'm going to do that just to get rid of it. Other than that, on the top we have the ribbon. The ribbon has several different states. You can minimize to tabs, so the ribbon looks like this. Then you have to pick one in order to have the ribbon open up again. You can minimize to panels, which means you're going to have the title. When you hover over one, the ribbon itself comes down. You can minimize to panel buttons. Looks like this, just a little bit easier to read. Same thing happens when you hover over them. Or you can minimize to tabs again. And you can also turn the ribbon off. I think for right now I'm going to leave the ribbon turned on. Now there's a toolbar, known as a pull-down menu, across the top where there can be. Now you notice it's gone, and it's gone because I went back and forth between two of the workspaces. If you want that back on, you can type menu bar and set that value to 1, and now you've got pull-down menus. And again, for long-time users of AutoCAD or even any other software, or for that matter for people like me who really like the way it's organized, the tools that are on the pull-down menu are pretty complete and give you pretty much everything you're going to need. You've got the leaning A here, the sort of lazy A. You pick that. It has the same function as the little world button in the Microsoft products, but this just gives you a way of opening things, creating new projects, opening drawings, saving, the save as function. But the nicest thing about it is that it actually gives you a listing of the last group of drawings that you've opened and allows you to pin them so that they're always available. So if I always wanted the grid decimal 11 by 17 to be available, I could pin it open just like that. You've got another tab up here that changes workspaces. It is exactly the same as the one down here, put up there for reasons that I don't quite understand. You've also got something called the Quick tab, where you can just quickly start a new drawing, open an existing drawing, save as, which is different than save because it changes the name and or location of the drawing. You've got the undo and the redo buttons here, and then you've got a print function with some drop down, and you can indicate what it is you want printed. That's the overview of the interface and some of the changes that were made in AutoCAD 2011.